Hey y'all, how you doing today? We have done it. What have we done? We have done it. We unlocked Trivia 11 today, completely free to play without a single purchase from Comp2us, just good old-fashioned grinding, theory crafting, and building our mercenaries. So without wasting any more time, let's get into it. Now don't get it twisted, we are not even close to being able to full auto Trivia 11. We can full auto Trivia 10 at maybe a 50% win rate right now, which I'll show you where our runs are going wrong, because with the team that we've built together, the team that I'm using, we definitely have some shortcomings but we'll also go over how we're going to fix those shortcomings. And other than that, of course, as always, when fighting a boss we haven't gone over before, we're going to break down their skills and describe which helpful buffs and debuffs to bring to make it as easy as possible. So moving on, let's go ahead and open Trace Trivia 11. Okay, the first thing we're going to take note of is our positioning. We are pushed very forward on the boss. We like to be as close to this boss as possible so that no one is too far away to break ourselves out of any CC, or no one's too far away, to actually get a hit on the boss. So let's take a look at Trivia. Level 66, she's a ranger, so if you have cards that deal bonus damage to rangers, then that will help you with this boss. Attack 22,000. That is freaking insane. That's a lot of attack. That's actually what our biggest problem is that attack is so high, she does a ridiculous amount of damage. So we got to figure out a way to cut that attack. And we'll go over the helpful buffs and debuffs after I go over her skills. Defense pretty mediocre at 1,000, so you should be able to do a pretty decent amount of damage with your skills without having to worry about, her defense mitigating too much of your damage. And 300,000 HP, we're just going to round that up. That's a lot. So you got to bring a lot of damage, and you got to be able to take a 22,000 attack power attack without your team being completely wiped. Let's go ahead and take a look at her skills. The first one's going to be Absorb Energy, increases her attack by 20% each when the number of tied up enemies increases. So basically, we'll go ahead and look at tie up so I can explain that a little bit better. Tie up inflicts damage to 3 enemies in the order of tankers, dealers, rangers, and supporters, inflicting damage by 100% of the attack, and makes the enemy tied up for 3 turns. When the tied up time ends, the enemy will be inflicted with damage by 72% of the attack. So this is going to be the first attack in her rotation. Basically, she's going to do that 100% multiplier damage to 3 members on your team, probably your tank, whoever's closer, and then your dealers. But if you don't have any dealers, then rangers, like where I'm at. So I'm basically, my problem right now is, since my rangers are squishy and her attack is so high, that does a lot of damage. So I'll tell you how we're going to clear that up in a minute. On top of that, whenever your allies are tied up, you have to hit them to untie them, and if you don't do that, her next attack will be increased based on the amount of allies that are still tied up whenever she gets to that next attack. Just as a general passive, she gains immunity against debuffs that restrict all movements. So she's a tree, dug into the ground, got roots. You're not going to be able to, toss her around. You're not going to be able to push her, but you are still able to push back her attack bar. Flood of Darkness, this is going to be the second attack in her rotation. So what she's going to do, she's going to summon 7 projectiles that she just launches and hits all of your mercenaries. So you do only have 5 mercenaries, so there's going to be 2 extra ones that can hit your squishies, which is a recipe for disaster, because if you have a unit that doesn't have a lot of defense, they end up taking 144% of her insane attack, and that could possibly be the end of your run, because if you lose that ally, then you won't be able to take down her shield as fast. So we definitely need to find a way to either increase our defense or mitigate that chance of your squishies getting that second hit. Unavoidable Darkness casts a skill to all enemies for 1 turn that inflicts damage by 200% of the attack, makes them confused for a turn with a 65% chance. So this is if her charge is where she has a charge skill, where you have to hit her 7 times to prevent her from using the charge skill, and if she does this, then you will lose. That is so much damage. And then if she confuses any allies on your team, your allies start hitting each other instead of hitting the boss, and it's basically game over. that's just a big game over. So we definitely have to be able to do 7 hits before her charge gets off, so that she does not get this out. And the last move in her rotation is Sharp Roar. Inflicts damage to all enemies by 44% of the attack, which even though it's 44%, it can still be a decent hit on your squishies. So still, even though, don't underestimate that. And it also grants fear to one of your teammates for 2 turns. Basically just makes them run off instead of actually being able to take their turn. So instead of going through my team first, I'm going to go ahead through the strategy details so that we can see who people are using, and we can do a little bit of guesswork as to how that's working, because these are the units that are in teams that have actually successfully done Trivia level 11. And I don't mean, you know, if you're able to do it manually, that's awesome, but the real goal here is going to be doing it auto. Because do you really want to have to sit there and manual it for 3 or 4 minutes over and over and over? Or do you want to sit there and, you know, times 10 every, 20 minutes? It's just a lot easier to do the times 10 full auto. That's what makes these games so great, is you don't have to focus on them constantly. So that's going to be our main goal. It looks like a lot of people are using Magnus as a tanker. So we know that she targets tankers first. So he is self-defense buffing, and that's probably very helpful for mitigating the damage that she puts out on the tanker, as well as whenever you skill him up, he puts down a debuff that makes the boss, it increases her chance to receive negative effects. So basically it lowers her resistance so that it can make all of your continuous damage and stuff like that stick a lot easier, which is why I think people are using him. Amy is a no-brainer. People use Amy because her heavy hitting bullet, it can hit 7 times, which does a lot of damage, as well as it can pretty much get rid of the boss's entire shield during her charge cast. On top of that, whenever it is skilled up, it will be an attack break, which is how we are actually going to be able to defeat this boss. Is not going to be by surviving for a long period of time. It's not going to be out tanking the boss's attack. It's going to be completely negating the boss's insane attack and then trying to buff up our defenses to survive such heavy hits while dealing out a good amount of damage ourselves. Iron is the third one on this list. Now, 4 combo strikes, this does damage based off the boss's max HP for the last hit, so that's going to be a big hit. And also, whenever it's skilled up, it's a defense break, which makes the boss take more damage from everyone on your team, which is going to, the faster we kill the boss, the less chances she has to end our team, as well as his third skill will make him invincible. So even if she hits him with a very strong attack, it's going to do 0 damage to him, so he can survive those attacks and maybe be built super damage so that he can get her down even faster without having to worry about focusing on defense. And then of course his rage skill just does a lot of damage. Next, we're going to be looking at Tala. Obviously, people use her because she puts a crit rate buff to your entire team, as well as whenever she uses her rage skill, whenever it's skilled up, it does more damage if it hits the same target. The boss is the only target, so it can do a lot of damage, as well as it is 3 hits to the shield. I found this one super interesting. So number 5 on the list is Robert, and people are using Robert to take advantage of the fact that he has burning continuous damage. Whenever he's skilled up, he increases the continuous damage that the boss takes with a debuff. So if you're paired him with Magnus makes the boss more susceptible to debuffs, which makes Robert very useful, because not only does he burn the boss, he puts out robots that also do bonus damage as well, and they take turns with your team. So if she's doing her charge skill and you're not getting enough hits in before she gets that off, the little robots that he puts out definitely help contribute to getting that shield down and contribute to damage overall. So I thought that was a very interesting pick, and I never thought about that, so that's what's so interesting about it to me. Now, Griselda is like one of the best picks for this boss, and I'll tell you why. Her first skill hits 2 times, okay? So it takes off 2 parts of the shield right off the bat. On top of that, Whenever it's skilled up, it actually decreases the boss's attack bar. So the boss is susceptible to having her attack bar pushed back, and the more you push it back, the longer it takes for her to get a turn. The longer it takes for her to get a turn, you can just sit there and wail on her constantly. The only thing about this is it only works for pushing back the attack bar if the boss has more than 50% of her health. So once you get her down to 50% of her health, she will stop getting her attack bar pushed back by Griselda, but that does not mean that it's not extremely useful for getting her down 50% just right off the bat anyways. Plus, she summons a lot of followers that are able to attack the boss with you and take off that shield and just do bonus damage in general. So very, very good pick. If you are working on a Trace Specimen team, this is going to be your number one pick. She is so good for trivia. Number 7 on the list is going to be Siam. Her first skill can supply 2 different debuffs. She can do a defense break and she can do an attack break. So that's very nice. 2 debuffs rolled into 1 unit. Plus her triple card, she's able to just hit 3 times and take off 3 rounds of that shield without even really trying. So that's very pretty much just for supplying debuffs and getting the shield off ASAP. 8th on the list is Miles. If I had to guess why, I don't have any experience with Miles, so this is strictly guesswork, but I'm just thinking he's easily accessible. You get his contract by unlocking him with a condition that anybody can do, no gems required, and he can hit 3 times. So that's easy to take off enemy shields with that attack. Next is going to be Rebecca, sort of the same thing I'm guessing as Miles, as her first skill is able to hit 2 times, which is very useful for a first skill, as well as she, whenever skilled up, gets debuffs on the first skill too. So that's a very good pick for just getting the shield down, making sure the boss is debuffed, and getting what your setup, basically. And last on the list is Tarak, obviously, just because I think the reason he's on this list is because his banner just finished, so everyone is using him. Like a lot of people have him as a staple in their team. Not saying that he's good or bad for trivia, I'm just saying that he is people's most built unit, so a lot of people probably have him at level 48 or 50 with promoted SSR cards, and it's just a better pick for them to bring him than it is to bring other people. Plus, he can hit 2 times with his first skill. He puts electric shock, that's a debuff, so a very good pair with Magnus or with Robert, just putting a lot of continuous damage and debuffs on the boss in general. Plus his electric field can mitigate some of the damage that the boss can put out. So is he a good pick? Yeah, sure. I'm not sure like if he's strictly here because of the banner, but nonetheless, I don't think he's a bad pick at all. So moving on, I'm going to explain the team that I used to get here, and of course I'm unable to do it right now, but I think a lot of what people being able to do it has to do with is pay to win, of course. So if you have like 3 level 50s on your team, it definitely becomes a lot easier to do stuff like this. Right now I'm sitting at 3 level 46s and 2 level 44s. We have a lot of work to put into on my team, but I'll tell you how I got here with them, even as completely free to play, and how I think it's still going to work even whenever we max all these units. We should still definitely have this on lock. Nadine is a big one for me because first skill is defense break, makes the entire boss take more damage overall from all your units. Second attack is a slow debuff, so her entire rotation is extended. It takes her longer to get her attacks out. You have more time to destroy the roots on everybody. You have more time to destroy her shield, and that's just very good in general, as well as her third skill decreases the attack bar by 50%. So if the boss is going to take a turn and you want to take a whole nother round with your units, using that third skill is going to make that possible. Next, I'm using Josephine strictly for her third skill in this fight, specifically putting the speed buff on my entire team, making them all take more turns, and then having the shield, a protection as well, that she puts on them to help try and survive some of these crazy attacks this boss can put out. So Bannon is a little bit more of a non-traditional pick for this boss, but I'll tell you why I'm using him. His third skill, of course, as well as being an attack buff for your entire team, making them do more damage, whenever it's skilled up, it increases your team's max HP. So if the boss puts out a heavy hit, you have a little bit more HP to try and eat that, and so that maybe you could recover later on. Plus his second skill is a heal, an AoE heal. His third skill is an AoE heal. He is able to put out a lot of heals, Plus his first skill multiplier, even though it only hits one time, has a pretty good range and has a pretty good multiplier. And whenever he uses his rage skill, he becomes completely untargetable. Whenever that is skilled up, it supplies another attack buff for your team, and it increases the resistance of your team. Tala and Amy, we already went over with the recommended units, so without wasting any more time, let's get into it and we'll see exactly where we're going wrong. This first wave should pretty much be no problem. I'm not going to narrate exactly what's going on here, but I will go ahead and say before I speed this part up that we are not manualing. My goal is not to sit on my phone or on my computer for like 8 hours at a time trying to get equipment in this game. My goal is to have it on full auto with at least a 50% win rate, so every time I check my phone, every half hour or twice an hour, I have a few 5-star equipments that I could sort through and decide if I want to keep or sell. So we are not manualing, we are seeing exactly how it works with full auto, and I'll tell you like things that go wrong as they go wrong. Alright, so starting off on the second wave, we can go ahead and point out a few things. This team is pretty reliant on a combo where Josephine puts down speed, Bannon puts attack, Tala puts out crit rate, Nadine puts out a defense break, and then Amy does a nuke. So since it's on full auto, they're not always going to do that, especially since it has multiple waves. You aren't going to get to start every wave with your full combo ready. Hopefully having a little bit of utility in all of our other skills will make that easier, but getting on the boss wave can be a problem if we don't have our cooldowns, like if Bannon starts with first attack and Amy puts down the mine, or especially a problem with this boss is whenever you buff up and you actually do get your combo off, whenever you get wrapped up, you lose the buffs. So we're going to have to see how they fare whenever that happens. Not going to lie, we're probably not getting far. My guys are not built enough for this. But we're getting through the first and second wave pretty much no problem. We already ate the rage skill of the mini boss. He's just sitting there kind of taking it. So really our main focus for problems that we need to fix is going to be on the boss. Okay, so we actually did end up losing Josephine here because since we're autoing, we decided to use a bunch of just, utility abilities instead of using what we needed to kill the boss. And then Amy still wasted her rage skill on the boss. So we're definitely going to need to increase our stats so that if something terrible like that does happen, we are capable of getting that, being able to do that and still not die. Now, the boss, I'm pretty sure even if Josephine was here, the boss has a high speed as well. She would have cut into Josephine. So the biggest part of our team is getting a setup so that the boss takes the minimal amount of turns while you take the most amount of turns. So we are going to need Josephine to definitely be faster than the boss. We practically need everyone to be faster than the boss. So I think for a minimum speed, we're going to need like 1500 speed on everybody if we don't get either the speed buff off firsthand or if Nadine doesn't take a skill firsthand. But Nadine will pretty much always either have her speed break up or her attack par decrease up, as well as Josephine. By the time that fight comes around, she also has a chance to have her speed buff up. So that's we're pretty much guaranteed to be able to slow the boss down and stop her from going nuts on us, as long as Josephine and Nadine has the actual speed to get in there and do what they need to do. Now, as for the damage that the boss dished out, clearly we're going to need, the shields to be down. We're going to need Bannon to take his turns to help increase our max HP, as well as having such a bad experience on the second wave whenever I thought we were doing well, but the mini boss turned around and kind of ruined our run for us. So being able to have full health or be fully healed and not really in a bad position to begin with whenever we get to her is going to be a big part of it. So we've just been completely stomped. How are we going to stop that from happening in the future? Well, first of all, the big one, being level 46 is a no-go. We need to be level 50 so that we could have the highest base stats possible, and with the higher base stats, rings like this with percentages are going to give us more total stats as well, so that we will be able to get more and more defense, more and more HP, more and more attack, so that we can take less damage and do more damage to the boss. Another big part is going to be getting these exclusive equipments. The legendary exclusive equipments come with a bonus effect added to your abilities. So we are basically missing out on a part of our kit for 4 out of 5 of our units because I only have a legendary exclusive equipment on 1 unit, as well as the stats that come with these exclusive equipments, like the defense, can be powered up to increase our stats overall. So that's going to help as well. Another big one, these cards, the blue ones definitely need to be promoted to SSR, that all of our skills need to be promoted so that we're doing the most damage possible, we're getting the most effects out of our abilities, and whenever you level up these cards to 20, you get more stats as well. So we have levels to get on our cards, and we have a lot of promotions to do. Of course, another fairly obvious one is going to be these abilities. So with a basic defense just at S and a basic HP just at S, we could take those up to triple S and then get a lot more defense, a lot more HP, so that we could survive those types of attacks. And then in turn, increasing our crit rate, crit damage, and our basic attack, pin rate, all of those soft cap required stats where you need a minimum of crit rate or you need a minimum of pin rate, we can make those easier to obtain as well. Another big thing we need to do is replacing gear that is like this. Premium gear that's like green level or blue level. We definitely want purple or above, because with every substat that is on that gear, as you upgrade it, it increases the substat on the gear. But a big one is going to be getting all legendary equipment from previous stages, getting good substats and rolling on those substats, trying to get higher rolls on the range of the substat can increase so that we can get the most stats that we need possible. This way we can achieve the speed we need, we can get more defense, more HP, and be able to better survive those attacks. And lastly, but something that I think is one of the most important things to do, is all this equipment that is plus 12 or is not plus 15 needs to be increased to plus 15, because it is an increase in stats obviously every time you increase the level, but the jump from 14 to 15 is a lot higher than it would be to increase it from like 10 to 11. How it increases like, you know, a certain percent all the way up to 14. Once it goes from 14 to 15, that jump is a much larger margin than if you were just upgrading it from 13 to 14. So getting plus 15 on all of our equipment is going to be the last thing we need to do. And once we've achieved all of these goals, then I think with this team specifically, we will have a pretty easy time doing Trivia 11 on full auto. But other than that, that's it for me today. I'll see y'all later. Bye.